how to improve your painting or your money back. But since you don't pay for this part of your classes, you're not going to get anything back. But I'm going to show you something about how to improve your paintings that a lot of you haven't thought of. A lot of you, I teach it once in a while with students on a one-on-one basis. But I haven't really ever done it in a group environment here, so we'll give it a try. But it's called checkering. And I don't know really what it's called, but it doesn't matter. It's my thing, and I made it up. But it is a technique that old illustrators used over and over and over again. So like if you look at the old magazines, the illustrators at the turn of the century, Life magazine, the Saturday Evening Post, Norman Rockwell, those pictures pop. And one of the problems that a lot of students have is that they'll do a background and they'll put a vase on it. And the vase looks like it's cut out and glued onto that background. In fact, there are a lot of painters like Gary Jenkins that's on television where he'll paint the canvas black and then he'll put a poppy on top of it, and that poppy looks like some fluffy thing on top of it, and it doesn't look like it belongs on the painting. It looks like it's floating. It's not attached to the painting. But yet, if you look at Norman Rockwell's and some of the illustrators, a lot of the Western painters, they did checkering. And it's, like I said, it's not something that I've really seen or artists talk about it, but I'm going to try to illustrate it here the best I can.
Can you spell it? How do you spell it?
Like checkers.
Checkers.
And it's my word. It's like playing checkers, but you know how checkers are,
Yeah.
you know, if you look at checkers, okay, and then you have like a dark square and a dark square and a dark square and a dark square and a dark square. Okay, so normally we do know this, that if we're doing a portrait, that if the light's hitting the portrait or the face here, okay, we oftentimes darken this part of the face, this part of the background. Okay, it's light upon dark, dark upon light. And that's usually how a lot of teachers will say light upon dark, dark upon light. And while I was growing up, they would say dark upon light, light upon dark. I'm like going, yeah, but what does that mean? And I don't know, their teachers told them. I'm like going, what does that mean? So anyway, so light hits here. So where this light hits, we darken behind there. And then where this becomes dark would be the shadow. So this could be a vase or a face. Where this becomes dark, we leave light in here. So usually this is light. And usually we'll go transition from light into dark. Okay, so we'll have light and then slowly this will get dark. As this starts to go this way and get darker along the edge here, this gets dark and slowly gets lighter. Okay, and that's how the old school portraits were done. And that's how a lot of people work on doing their still lifes and whatnot. Okay. So, looking at the old illustrators, because that's what I ended up doing, I'm like going, God, those guys are good. And these are just like real simple forms. But I just want to kind of give you an idea of what you need to be thinking about. So remember the term checkering. So we end up having a line. And what we want to do is we want to think about if this area is dark on a line, this is light. And then where this is light, this becomes dark. And where that's light, where this is light, this becomes dark. See how it starts to look like a checkering book? Okay. I mean, a checker board? Okay. So if we have an object, what we want to do is we want to make this as complicated as possible. Now the more you go back and forth, the original face we just did 1, 2. But in old illustrations, and you can just follow these illustrations, if you follow some of the Louis L'Amour covers, Frank McCarthy doing the covers for the books, you can follow their legs from the stirrup up to their legs, up to the horse's head. And whatever is dark, there's light behind it, and whatever's light, then it's dark. And so what they'll do is that they'll just actually take any form, and let's say this is where the light is hitting. They'll purposely put dark right here, okay? Now rather than with the portrait where we have that large mass going into a softer mass, and then darkening on the other side, what they will do is that they'll actually very purposely fade that out and put a dark there, and then they'll re-highlight this from another way. And these, it's hard to do this on one of these boards, but they'll actually with that gunk that I just sprayed on there, works kind of cool. But what they'll actually do is go back and forth. And so like if we were to do an onion or if we were to do a vase, you would consciously try to change this every few, not even an inch, half inch, quarter inch, constantly going back and forth like this. And what happens is that that vase now actually starts to become part of, if we, let's just call this a vase. Okay. So that vase starts to actually become part of the painting. Now, if the light's coming this way, the light's coming across this way, this would be all shadow. But don't be so quick to just darken everything, because this shadow could find itself actually lightening up because of the reflective lights, and we could actually start darkening the background in here. Okay? And then we can darken this part of the vase up. We could have light hitting the table over here, and we can darken all this over here. And then the reflection of the vase up here can actually fall, or a reflective light can fall in here, and we can lighten this and darken this part.
Then you get your form, right?
And you start getting your form. But the form switches back and forth. So this stays dark, then this gets light, then as this turns away from you, it gets reflective light, we darken this. This will improve your painting 150%. And it's really hard to do it as a black and white like this, but you can kind of get the idea. And it's something that you might want to just kind of practice. And it takes a little bit of a discipline. And you constantly are going in and out of value. All the way around. And what happens is that that vase now starts to become part of the painting. It becomes an integrated part of the painting as you start seeing your shape in there. Rather than having a dark background, a shape that's... Okay, so rather than having a shape just standing there on a black background with one color, you can see that by going back and forth like this, you can actually really improve the way that quality of line. So you would do the same thing on a face. If you're doing a horse, you would have the horse head sticking out if you want shadow. You would underneath the horse's head, you would put that into shadow. You'd bring light underneath on the background. And then when the shadow of the horse comes out further, where the highlight comes, you darken. So you'd put a tree back there, or even just value. The thing is, when you are aware of it, when you look at old illustrations, and that's where you need to turn to, because this is an old illustrator trick. This is what they knew back then that had been forgotten and not lost. I mean, not taught. You know, it had been lost for 30 years during the whole abstract experiment. That this whole checkering thing, to get things to look integrated into your painting, and the more complicated you can do it, the better you get. I guarantee if you start doing this in your paintings, you will improve your paintings 100%. You'll be amazed. And I do this with students constantly. And I always, like I said, I normally talk to them one-on-one about it, but it's time to bring it out of the closet and give it to everybody. But it is absolutely one of the keys to improve your paintings. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. What you do is you take the same color that you would have, except what you're doing is that you're lightening the value where the light is. And then you just start purposely darkening it so that it really has a darker value to it. And then you take the same color like this vase and you bring a reflective color. Now this color here is not going to be the same light as here, but it will be light enough so that there's contrast between these two. And the more you do this, the smaller spaces that you do this, if you could cut this in half right here, if you could cut that in half and put a dark in there and put a light right there as a reflective light, and then make a small dark like that. The more you do this, the more you break this up and go back and forth, working with the values that you're working on. You're still thinking about shadows all on this side. They're just reflective colors, but they're lighter than the background, and then they switch back and forth. The more you do that, the stronger your painting will become. The more those objects sit in the painting. It is one of the secret things that few people actually talk about, but it will improve the way your paintings look. And we do a lot of still life homework assignments in here. And what I want you to do is start adopting that. So if we were going to go do fruit, I don't want to see just a dark background with a light lit fruit. I want you to play around with the highlights and shadows and nuances to try to get checkering involved in your painting. And you'll see that your paintings will improve 500%. We were talking about that today on your painting. And I said, I'll just leave it. It's kind of chiaroscuro, having that come out of the dark. But this here is a real valuable tool. Any questions? Okay.